All right. Hello. It is Thursday, November 12th, 2015 at 1 o'clock Eastern Time, and this is Marketing Live. I'm your host, Amy Jorgensen. On today's live broadcast, we're talking about engaging college students and their parents online. Marketing Live is part of a Higher Ed Live network offering viewers direct access to the best and brightest minds in education. Live webcasts allow viewers to share knowledge and participate in discussions around the most important issues in the industry. All episodes of Marketing Live are free and accessible in the video archives at higheredlive.com and in podcast format on iTunes. Today's live broadcast is made possible by FormStack. FormStack is an online form builder and your go-to tool for higher ed website conversions. FormStack makes it easy for marketers to create branded, mobile-ready web forms without writing code. Build donation forms, application forms, event registrations, and more with the web's only Section 508 compliant form builder. Interact with your audience on social media using FormStack's Facebook tab or social media autofill features. For even more conversions, use FormStack's robust analytics data to refine your form. FormStack also partners with popular marketing applications so you can nurture your leads more effectively. Visit formstack.com to learn more about the ways FormStack can double your response rates and increase conversions today. Higher Ed Live is produced by M. Stoner, a marketing communications firm that works with education institutions on branding, strategy, web design, and more. So we're going to dive into our topic today. I would like to welcome our guests. We have Stephanie Geyer. Stephanie is the Vice President for Website Strategy and Interactive Marketing Services at Ruffalo Noel Levitz. Did I say that correctly, Stephanie?
It's Ruffalo Noel Levitz, but that's just fine.
Okay, sorry about that.
It's okay.
Excellent. Well, we're so glad to have you here, Stephanie. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
And then we also have the very exclusive Lance Merker. He's the President and CEO of Omni Update. Welcome, Lance.
Thank you, Amy. I didn't realize I was exclusive, but thank you.
You're the president. I feel like we gotta, sing a song before we announce you.
Please don't.
We're definitely not singing for anybody, so we'll avoid that.
Well, thank you very much, Amy. It's an honor to be here.
So everyone who's watching along, please do not hesitate to ask any questions using hashtag HigherEdLive on Twitter. I'll do my best to answer questions as they come in. So college students and their parents communicate very differently than they did 5 or 10 years ago. Their wants, their needs, their expectations, and preferences have evolved, and it is imperative that we stay ahead of the curve. Today, we will explore how to optimize communication strategies and content across multiple digital platforms in order to effectively communicate with students and their parents. So diving into this, how do students and parents like to learn more about opportunities to engage in campus activities prior to enrollment?
Wow, it's a really big question, Amy, and an exciting one. We're tickled that you've asked us to answer it. Certainly, Lance and I both have a lot of data from our work over 10 years with eXpectations. And as you know, in the 2014 study, we did survey seniors and parents, but we are also qualitative experts, too. Both of us have college juniors in our households.
We do.
So, I'm going to do my best to keep my professional data hat on, but I do have some tales to tell of my own daughter's enrollment and some recent experiences that I've had that have been great and not so great. But I think your question was, how do students like to learn more about campus activities before enrollment? And so to think about that, we do look at results from the study where we learned that half of parents in our study said that they were using Facebook. Not very many of them using Twitter. YouTube was in there as well. But they're certainly also spending a lot of time on college and university websites, exploring the same channels that their students do. In kind of the same approach, first looking at academic program information, then certainly looking for cost or maybe starting with cost. But then getting a sense of the community, the lay of the land, what the campus setting looks like. Is it safe? Does it appear to be safe? Perhaps looking specifically at what safety resources are available to their students. Lance, am I forgetting anything?
No, those are the big ones. I mean, they certainly want to understand fit. They want to understand projecting themselves in that new world, that new environment. We can go into more detail perhaps about some of the specific things that they're very interested in hearing about, particularly about course curriculum, majors and programs of interest. And it's a really interesting time because as parents, Stephanie and I both watched our kids respectively go through this process, and there's a lot of emotional reaction to thinking about leaving home, looking at the college from a geographic perspective, from a nurturing perspective. Is it my new home? Am I going to find friends there, and so forth? But even more importantly, they're really thinking about the next 4 years and what that means to them. I was really quite surprised that my son was so involved in thinking about whether or not the colleges had the classes of interest to him. At that point in the registration process, I thought it was mostly going to be about fit and the emotional reaction to the campus itself and the visits and the people that he met and everything else. But it was equally, if not more so, about the actual classes that he would be able to take, the professors even that were teaching those classes. He was very interested because he realized that once he got there, he would probably figure out how to live and fit in. But he had 4 years there, and he better have the classes that were interesting to him to hold his attention. I was very impressed with that because I figured it would be far less about the program information than it would be about the campus experience. But no, I think freshmen or incoming freshmen are really thinking hard when they get right down to it. Maybe the first 10 or 20 schools on their list, or 5 or 10 schools on their list, however big their list might be, are weeded quickly by fit and feel. But once it gets down to those last 3 or 4 choices that they're trying to make, if they're fortunate to be accepted to more than one college and they've got a couple of choices, they're going to look really hard at the curriculum before they make their final decision.
So have you found, and this is going off the script, but have you found it's easy to find a lot of information about the curriculum and about the professors, or do you have to do a lot of digging? Is that something that we can improve on at universities, making sure that the information is more apparent and easier to locate?
I think it's way too hard. I think it needs to be improved upon quite a bit. I think that unfortunately, incoming prospective students are looking to outside resources more than they should be. I think that's a failing of the universities to really engage at that point, and they are. They're going out to Rate My Professor. They're going out to these websites that you probably don't want them going to because it's just the Wild West. And yet you've got that information on campus, and you've got phenomenal professors that you can elevate on the website, the course information, the experiences of the students taking those courses. I think that needs to be more a part of the website.
That's a great point.
I'd agree. I think a lot of the challenge that we see in website development across higher ed is coming to agreement that prospective students are the primary market, and then organizing the architecture of the IA of the site accordingly. And we understand that there are so many diverse markets that are served by any given college or university in the US or Canada or really anywhere. But if we don't choose a primary audience in the development process, or process if you're in Canada, then you're really not serving anybody. I have a little rant that I give sometimes about the approach of equality and democracy on college or university homepages, and I think it's ridiculous. We do need to make choices. We need to prioritize, and there is no other resource as important to prospective students and parents and other decision influencers as the web. They need to be number one.
So does the web also include social media? Like, you talked a little bit about how the parents are somewhat influenced by Facebook, but the website is number one, and I 100% agree. And it's kind of embarrassing when you look at so many different universities and the status of where their website is. So are there other means of communication that we could that make an impact on these folks and that we can leverage?
Yeah, absolutely. Social media is important to students. We've known that for years. We also know it's important to parents. And Facebook, I think, is one of the unifying assets that we have where students are still there. There certainly has been an erosion over the past few years, but students are still there. Parents are there as well. Grandparents are there, extended family. And so, case in point from my own home over the weekend, actually yesterday, we had some snow in Colorado, where my daughter goes to school, and her institution posted a really nice collection of images of snow across the campus, which I was able to share and say, hey, this is where my daughter goes to college. Isn't it beautiful? And by the way, yes, now it's snowing in Colorado on the flatlands where we are. And I was tickled that they packaged that up so nicely for me, and that I could extend it out to my friends and family to say, hey, this is where Drolma is, and by the way, here's the weather report. You know, simple, not particularly of consequence, not like, you know, involved in her academic program in any way, but still, I think, a charming way to remind folks that she attends that school.
It's almost a way of kind of keeping you connected to her, because you get to see everything that she's seeing, even though she's further away.
Yeah, exactly.
I love that. Anything to add, Lance?
I'm sorry?
Anything to add to that about social media engagement with parents and students and how we can leverage that?
Well, I mean, obviously, it's a wonderful way to connect both with your student who might be on campus, and for colleges to be creative about prospecting and engagement at the prospect level. I think that you know, we give Facebook and other social media a lot of attention, but not necessarily in the right ways. And I think there's a lot of challenges ahead to figure out how to better engage. There's some interesting aspects that we as parents, Stephanie, I've talked about this with our students before, about how they treat Facebook in particular. And you know, we treat it as being kind of the primary source of engagement. And yet the high school students that are moving into college are oftentimes treating it maybe a little differently. Not so much as a communication with their parents, but maybe in high school a communication with their friends, and later on in different ways. And I think the jury's still out there in terms of what's going to happen with the use of Facebook for colleges connecting to prospective high school students. But high school students are using it, and we're seeing really great numbers in the e-expectation data, and I just think that the colleges aren't necessarily taking advantage of it as much as they could. So, you know, as a parent, it's wonderful to be able to kind of stay connected to my son as he's, you know, posting photos and interacting with his friends and new friends and everything else. Some of that is a little, you know, it's a little creepy for him because he feels like he's not sure whether he should post things or hide things from his parents, even though, you know, he wants to communicate with them. So, you know, there's some weird things there, but I think we deal with that with teenagers as well in high school, so that's nothing new. But in terms of how colleges are able to actually engage with college students, I think that it's a challenge. It's a challenge both at the high school level and then the transition to college. It changes, and I'm not an expert in this, but you know, we've seen data from other sources even that discuss how the change between high school and college and the use of Facebook, and then after college as well, it's very different. It's almost like there's three different worlds. There's the teenage use of Facebook, there's the college young professional age of Facebook, and then there's the you know, more mature adult usage of Facebook, and very different worlds.
Yeah, I think that definitely is something that we'll continue to watch with e-expectations. One of the things that I was thinking about in preparing for our talk today, Amy, was just an issue or barrier that I think is perceived on campus in terms of FERPA and the ability for the institution to release information about a specific student and what they're doing and their progress, and there are rights, and it's important for us to preserve those. But I think that we don't take time on campus to fully understand the implications and the applications of FERPA, and instead of taking time to do that, we err on the side of caution and say very little. On the opposite end of the spectrum from my own experience with my college students, so I loved that little Facebook moment that I just shared with you. The only content that I've received from the institution of late is about once a semester, as we're approaching midterms and finals, I get some little packet asking me to send money to pay for some kind of care kit. Which isn't a bad thing in and of itself, but it was a lot of paper for not a lot of information. They could have emailed me, and I could have facilitated a transaction had I chosen to do that directly online through PayPal or whatever. And it just felt a little empty in the space of what I know is going on with her. And I was thinking about how much time and energy we spend in the recruitment process, then getting through orientation, and even some institutions doing a nice job of preparing content for, first-time freshmen, or your student is transferring. And then we kind of step away from that communication. My daughter just started her junior year this semester, which is a really pivotal time, especially in a teacher education program. And I have questions. Now, of course, I have the ability to ask her through text and FaceTime and, every other possible way. Or, gosh, she even came home last weekend, and that was great, too. Got to lay eyes on her, and that was great. But why can't colleges or universities create communications for parents at each year to say, hey, this is kind of how sophomore year looks, this is kind of how junior year looks, and maybe even differentiate by program, or even at the college or school or department level could be interesting. I know that I need to help my child think about student teaching. What can I be doing? How can I, as a snowplow parent, be moving things out of the way for this kid? So they're the kinds of communications that I wish we would have. I wish that they would come to me instead of asking to buy a big barrel of popcorn to send her, because, I can probably run it up to her faster than I can manage the paper order form at this point.
Excellent. So when it comes to that communication, let's say, I love that idea of let's keep the parents and family members, if they're interested, keep them in the loop of what's going on. So it sounds like some of the information you'd be interested in with that is, how can you, encourage your student to do different activities to help propel her towards her future? What are some other things that you might be interested in? What do you think, Lance?
Are you talking to me?
Yeah, sorry.
I'm sorry, Amy. I'm losing half the audio again. Ask the question one more time.
So what kind of information would you be interested in as a parent to receive throughout your students' progress in college? So their junior year, their sophomore year.
Okay.
What kind of? Yeah.
Can you hear me okay still?
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, good. I'm hearing part of that. But I think what you're asking was what types of communication as a parent I would like to receive throughout the... Yeah, and I heard most of... I'm having audio problems, I apologize. And I heard most of what Stephanie said, but I would agree that the changing responsibilities of the students and the parents through the 4 years that they're in their first program is really critical and a little mysterious, I think, for both the parents and the students. And I'm very fortunate that my son seems to have good communication lines with his institution, and I know he's doing all the right things because I'm getting good feedback at all levels. But as a parent, I always wonder what I could do more, or what I should be understanding more, how I could be helping in the process more. And I do think that there's a bit of a disconnect there. We're as parents, my wife and I were thinking a lot about how to encourage him to take a semester abroad, to do certain things that we know that he's not talking about. And we assume that there's plenty of information on campus, but we're not necessarily receiving it. There are parent days, and there's things that we participate in, and I'm sure that there's information that gets shuffled around there at some level that we might miss once in a while. So I'm sure part of it is the parents' responsibility. But I feel like it's a little underwhelming to understand, hey, what is the right time to do a study abroad program, for example? And that's usually a big win for everybody. The engagement of the student in terms of their educational career, their relationship with the college is strengthened. Their experience is terrific usually in these things that we hear about, and so is that best to do in the sophomore year, the junior year, the senior year, and what's the right way to encourage perhaps your student, your child as a parent to help them along? That's just one example, but there's many more. In terms of engagement activities with the college that would strengthen the retention story, that would strengthen the overall engagement with the college from the student perspective and the parent perspective too.
So how would you guys want to receive information? Would you want to receive emails like you talked about? What about text messages? What would be the best way to reach out to parents and keep them on the loop?
Well, email is great. I mean, it's certainly the communication of record for us with the college. We get all of the notifications that way for payments and important dates and information. So that's an easy one. And newsletters are another good one. It always feels like I'm sure that there's really good planning that goes behind this, but from a parent's perspective, the overall execution doesn't always seem really fluid to me. So, and I'm representative of one college here, but I hear this from others. I hear this from so many parents who were kind of in the same boat, saying, "Yeah, I wonder what's happening next, or what we should do now, or if there's something special that we should be thinking about at this point in time, since we have so many of our friends that are of the same age as our son." So I think that there's certainly social media is a great way to reach out. You're going to be able to connect to a percentage of the parents that way, and perhaps being creative in that regard as well is really important to think about. I think that, again, there's a lot of work that we as professionals can do to engage on social media better than we are. But certainly getting your communication strategy in line with all of the ways to do so. Just to harp on a pet peeve of mine, so many of the emails that we receive and that our friends receive that are not mobile friendly and really responsive in the right ways is still a challenge, I think, for colleges. And as a parent, I receive all of my email by mobile device on my phone, and I read most of it that way. So it's still a little bit behind in most of the colleges, and most of the folks we talk to are still struggling with this at a marketing communications level on campuses. But it's really important, not just for the parent, but for the students. My gosh, my son reads everything on his phone, and he has a folder of in his inbox on his desktop that collects a lot of stuff that he might look at once in a while, but as it passes by on his phone, just as we are doing now mostly, it's read there first. So being adaptive, being responsive in the right ways is really critical for all forms of communication, in particular email, and of course the website, the landing pages, the experience that you might have as you click through on the call to action links on those emails. Really, really important to make sure you get that perfectly dialed in for the mobile experience.
I think that's a really good point.
I just add to that, I think it's about layers, that we need lots and lots of layers. So posting on Facebook, email, having even the occasional print piece come in, something that we can pop on the fridge. Still, the refrigerator is still the center place of the family.
It is.
Well, and we do have a question coming from Amanda on Facebook. Anyone else has any questions, please feel free to send them on Twitter using hashtag HigherEdLab, all one word. So Amanda says she'd love to hear about successful/helpful forms of communication for students/parents pre and during orientation.
Amy, this is Lance. I'm not hearing so well, so I'm going to bounce off again and come back and see if I can clear up the problem. It's probably just my computer, but go ahead, Stephanie, and answer that. I couldn't hear the question at all, but I'll be right back.
So I think the question, Amy, was what kinds of communication are helpful during orientation. Is that right?
Yes, yep, and she said that, and what things parents/students wish could have been better communicated during orientation.
Mm-hmm. I think here's a real dope slap moment for us. We need to tell parents and students why they need to go to orientation. What is orientation? We all know how important it is. We know what's going to happen. We know why we want as many students there as possible. We know what it can do to set the stage for them to be successful in their first few days or weeks. But first-generation families, even not first-generation families, might be saying, okay, but the kid's got to work, and I've got to work, and do I have to be there, and what's the value, and how seriously should I take that? So I think we need to start with, hey, orientation, this is a part of the enrollment process, and you, the parents, need to be involved or not, depending on your institution, your student base. And then I think Lance is back. Yay.
I'm back.
Yeah.
That sounds great.
So we need to explain why orientation is important. We need to give them enough notice, too. I don't know about you, but I run a busy household. I'm on the road every week. I'm not home right now. And I have 3 girls who are running in different directions, and a husband and a dog and a horse. So they all need to be scheduled. And for orientation to come up as a surprise to me, not saying that happened, but if it were to come up, with less than 4 weeks notice, I would be really hard pressed to fit it into my family calendar. And if I needed to be there, it would be nearly impossible if I didn't have that notice. So I think explaining it, getting it out there early, giving them options, I think all important.
Well, and I love your kind of coming around of the value proposition of orientation. Why is it important that I go there? And every university I've ever worked at and schools I've gone to, orientation is so much information all at once that it's overwhelming. So almost going back to, what am I supposed to get from this? Am I supposed to get an overview of the different opportunities available to me? Am I supposed to know details about, fire safety in the dorms? Or it's like, no, it's probably just know that we're here to help you and make sure that you're safe, and making sure that we're keeping the value proposition at our forefront when we're developing content for orientation and communicating out that information to students and letting them know what's valuable, because it's too much all at once sometimes.
Yeah,
it really is. Yeah. Sorry, Lance, go ahead.
No, I was just agreeing. Yeah, I remember our orientation, and I guess we were unprepared for how much information there would be, such that we couldn't really structure our thoughts and our questions appropriately. But there were wonderful opportunities, to ask questions. There were panels, there were discussions, there were seminars. There was so much stuff. But it actually would have been better if we would have been a little more prepared in retrospect. So having a little more notice, having a little more understanding of what it's about, all of those things, I think, could make a much more engaging, more effective overall experience for both the parents and the students. I felt like, our son just kind of went along, and he had lots of activities, and it was just like, okay, follow the crowd and just go for it. But for the parents, it was a little confusing, because we didn't quite know what to expect and who to ask, and although we were kind of following the crowd too, it would have been nice to be a little more prepared.
Yeah, it almost sounds like we should have a the way that we set up conferences. It's almost the way we should do orientation. Here's a
Yeah,
list of
yeah.
all the things that are happening in all the different areas and all the different programs you can go to, and have that ahead of time so that way you can prep.
Yeah.
Excellent.
I'd agree. I was just thinking, though, kind of about the breadth of questions that parents have about their students being enrolled in college. Not even, the pre-enrollment, but kid enrolled already, whether it's transfer or as a new student, that it really goes from the macro kind of big issue stuff in terms of process, in terms of money, in terms of program and implications, things like that, down to the micro to, how do I mail a package to the kid?
Yes.
Yeah, really.
Believe it or not, I struggle
Yes.
with that, and she's an hour away. How do I orchestrate her books to be delivered to her, because I manage that for her, because I'm that kind of mom. What's the calendar? When is spring break, and does it line up with the kids who are in middle school and high school this year? And just being able to have that is sometimes a little bit of work to find on a college website. And, I've looked at a few college websites. You'd think I'd be better at zooming right to it. But it's true. There are times when I can't find what I need.
Excellent. So going back to what we've talked about, I mean, everything that you're saying is saying that the perception of the university and how, their website experience really influences the perception of a school. The quality website means a quality university. So what qualities on a website most attribute to their experience?
Wow, great question. Well, I mean, you break it down into design and content, and it's certainly both. I mean, it's about giving pathways to from a design level, it's about giving pathways to the information such that it looks like you're reading my mind. You're helping me find this information that's so important to me. You're helping me make my decision easier. That's about design, really. And then in terms of content, it's really about putting that level in there that's so important to the students and their parents. And we've got a lot of information in the expectations that has percolated up over the last 3 or 4 years in particular that show how important the program information is, the course curriculum information is, information about what they will learn. And that's, I think, I started with this conversation a while ago, but I think it's so important to enable that content in such a way that they can find it easily and they can go deeply into it. They can go really as deeply as they want to. I think we struggle sometimes in committee decisions about content when we're trying to balance between consumer consumption, typical consumer consumption of content versus real in-depth understanding of information and how deeply do we go. And I always vote to err on the side of depth, because that's really what the students that are making that final decision between you and somebody else, they're going to feel better about their decision when they feel like they got more information about and depth about the information than they did from the one that superficially gave them maybe that overview and trying to keep it too simple, trying to keep it such that you hear all these things about how students they have a 6-second attention span, so you can't make it too difficult. But when you get down to that level of choice, they're going to do the research. They're used to doing, they're used to studying hard to get into college, so they're going to do the research when they want to and when they need to. Right when it gets to that moment of final decision is where it's most important. So content has to be, broad enough and deep enough to really capture the essence of what it is you are going to provide over the competition.
So perhaps keep it succinct up at the top levels of here's kind of an overview of what you need, and then a whole bunch of more deep, heavy information underneath.
Yeah, I mean, certainly there's that concept of bite, snack, meal, where you can tantalize them with a little bit and then get a little deeper and then get a little deeper. But I think you have to be careful that they can follow that pathway. That's a design decision. And then you have to be careful that you have enough at all of those levels so that they don't think they're not going to get it if they go deeper. The 6-second attention span is real because they can quickly weed out and filter out the stuff that they know is not going to help them. And so that's where we need to be careful about design and even at the content level to make sure that they know that if they do go to that next step, or if they scroll a little bit further or click one more time or whatever it is, they'll get there because they will scroll, they will click. The evidence is pretty clear in that area now, I think, from all ages, and particularly when they're making this really critical decision about their lives. They get the fact that it's a 4 years of their life, which sounds like a long time when you're a junior or a senior in high school.
I would agree. I think that part of the art and science of setting up content strategy on sites and information architecture in particular is anticipating the questions that we know users bring, which can be pretty simplistic, but also then introducing additional content assets that we want them to consume. And so, there's the issue of how deep we go with the basic answers, but then also how can we leverage a good content experience to get them to stay on the page or move to additional pages, continue their exploration, and I think most importantly always is engagement. How can we get them to do something to actually further their connection with the institution, whether it's in their first visit, convincing them to complete the request for information form, and you'd better have one on your site, by the way, or maybe planning a visit or participating in maybe it's a Google Hangout, or actually getting their application started, or even just looking at the application process page are all really, really great calls to action. But a lot of times when we're delivering content for prospective students or for parents, we leave them on the page with the so what feeling or now what feeling. And I think that it's really important to think beyond, well, we're talking about the biology program. What do we want to say about biology? To, well, what do we want the biology prospect to do? Do we want them to maybe like our biology Facebook page, if there is one, or follow them on Twitter if they're doing that? I'm not suggesting that, but as an example of a potential call to action, make the ask. You are getting them into the most important content on your site. Don't leave it flat. Don't leave it for the parent to sit there and say, oh, all right, well, that's good, and daughter off onto the next thing.
I love that.
Yeah,
So have next steps.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's so true. I think that sometimes we assume that the website needs to be informational, brochure where may come to life with videos and imagery and motions and whatnot. And then there's another way to engage, and that might be social media. And we spend a lot of time thinking about how to engage on social media. But I think that the website provides tremendous engagement opportunities that we're missing out on. As Stephanie said, you got to have that basic inquiry, RFI, that basic call to action at some point. But then there's so many other calls to action that you can create. There's so many ways that you can get them to engage in little bits and bytes, one small step at a time. Signing up for a campus visit is a big win, obviously, but there's a lot of small steps that can be done ahead of that and even after that for follow-up. And I think that we don't want to just focus on the big wins in that regard and then leave everything else to social media engagement. I think we need to think really hard about how to bring engagement to the website where you really want them, where the information is. You've spent tremendous amounts of time and millions of dollars to build these assets of information on the website, and yet we don't really treat it as a point of engagement as much as we do social media, which we spend maybe far less time on in terms of the cost of building and thinking about information architecture and developing the good content that's required. I think that the website is where you want to engage as much as possible. You need to keep them there. You need to keep them coming back there. You need to keep them involved at that level when there are students on campus as well. Social media is great for what it does, but in terms of really getting the right content and the depth of that content and the appropriate timing of that content to make sure that your goals are achieved, you've got so much more you can do on the website than perhaps you're doing today, and I think that's a really good area to look at.
So you talked a lot about engagement online. How can we engage? How do you see our opportunities to engage people with our content, and having perhaps some of the next steps and some of the call to actions in there? I mean, is there opportunities for notification, or like what are things we can engage them?
Well, I'll let Stephanie speak to this too, but the thoughts I have around that, we do some pretty simple things on our website still, which surprise me because there's so much further that you can take them. For instance, the concept of liking things and comments. Maybe comments aren't necessarily appropriate in this setting, but frankly, just liking things on a website is very possible, and tying that back into social engagement then is easier too. And events, calendars, and so forth are usually pretty static displays rather than interactive concepts where people can either vote for or register in some maybe light way, like I'm interested. I don't know if I can come, but maybe I will. All of these kinds of engagement opportunities where they can give feedback into the system from the website, where the engagement is so important, are all technologically possible. They're coming of age, and you're seeing this more and more on websites today. It doesn't all have to go to social media.
I love that. What about you, Stephanie?
Yeah, I think the website is a hub, and social media is a spoke. Email is a spoke. I like the idea of asking the marketplace what they'd like and engaging responses there. We just want to make sure that we are clear. We're repeating our communications across a bunch of different channels. And oh gosh, please measure to see what works so that you're not running after the same question year after year. That's a mantra that we have at Ruffalo Noel Levitz is you need to know, did it work? And you need to not be shy about something that didn't work. So try everything. I love pilots. I love to experiment and have a crazy idea and see if in some small way you can get a sense of whether it's going to work. But the key to that is measurement. So having great sophisticated analytics, custom dashboards on your websites, making sure that you understand what the impact of an email campaign was in terms of engagement at every step along the way. All of that, standard marketing procedure for prospective students still applies when we're talking about engagement with our currently enrolled students and their parents.
I love that.
Yeah, it's interesting that we think about the ease of measurement on Facebook or other social platforms that they do a good job of counting things and showing you how many people have liked or participated. But it's very, very simple stuff. When you think about the capability of analytics on the website, it goes so much further, and we don't hardly utilize it. But the concept of counting every click on every important link and every pathway from the landing page to other pages, or from the home page and to other pages, and really getting down to the level of persona identification and who's traveling what pathways is actually incredibly insightful in terms of presenting the right information to the right people at the right time. In contrast, on Facebook, how many people liked something. What do you do with that? In some cases, it's really satisfying to have that immediate feedback, but it's really useless.
But I love the idea of having something engaging. So I'm thinking right now on my websites, at the bottom of the page, I could put down, did you find this information helpful, yes or no? And then it could say 50 out of 55 found this information helpful. And so one, it gives me an opportunity to build out my content, and two, it helps kind of reinstate, whether or not the information is what they want. I love that. I think we lost Lance here for a second.
I think so. Yeah, we're having some connectivity issues.
Well, and we do have a really good question from Christine on Twitter. Any ideas or examples of how colleges should engage parents in career planning as their students draw closer to graduation?
I'm just remembering back when the book about millennials came out and talking about helicopter parents, about the horror stories about parents showing up at job interviews with their students, and even campus job interviews and things like that. I think it goes back, maybe a solution goes back to the idea that I talked about earlier in terms of understanding what's happening for the student with their academic program in freshman, sophomore, junior, senior year, and including a component there that would support the understanding of what's happening for the career, what experiential learning opportunities are part of the program at this particular stage. Again, my focus group of one at home, student teaching would be, the obvious thing for her. But she actually landed a tutoring job this semester, which is a great resume builder. And she did that all on her own. She's very self-directed. Nice. But yeah, so I think, again, in that kind of, here's what to expect for the third year education major, could have a career component. That could be web-based content that the parent can find for themselves, or it could be curated in the form of an email. I don't know if social channels are best for that or not, but I think content around career based on stage, because we do know so much experiential stuff is happening and should be happening at every year, would be great.
I love that. And Lance, the question that we received from Twitter was, any ideas/examples of how colleges should engage parents in career planning as their student draws closer to graduation?
Oh wow, yeah, lots of thoughts there, because my focus group of one, my son picked a major, but still really unclear on his career. And a conversation I had with him recently was, well, Dad, should I consider graduate school? Of course, I was very excited to have that conversation, but it showed me that he really didn't know what he wanted to do next. And I think we've all probably had those feelings, or a lot of us have had those feelings maybe as we went to college. What do we do in the first year? What do we do in the second year? We're in the third and fourth year now. What do we do? We're about to graduate. What do we do next? And so if you don't really have a real clear career path in mind, there's a lot of questions. So yeah, helping understand what could be based upon how you're doing in particular classes, or what kind of classes you're signing up for. It'd be wonderful. Wouldn't it be wonderful to have that kind of at every step of the way, based upon the classes you're taking? These are some exciting paths for you. Now, every time you change and you add a new class or subtract a class, it changes a little bit and gives you all these different pathways that might be interesting to explore, either from graduate school perspective, or from internship perspectives. Maybe as a college you've got some relationships with some internship programs that might be exciting to that particular set of classes that you're taking right now. What a wonderful way to engage with the current students that keeps them connected to the college by helping them in all of these questions that are floating around in their minds.
So should we be keeping parents in on the loop on career opportunities, or should we be pushing more towards the students? So I work in career services at the University of Virginia, so this is getting me excited, and I don't want to go too much on this tangent, but one of the things that we struggle with is, like, a lot of students are really scared about their future and about the big unknown of graduating and finding an internship, and a lot of students are really intimidated. So does it help to give the information to the parents to say, here's some things you can encourage your student to do, or here's some opportunities, like you were saying. So you're getting into your third year and you're an ABC major, here's some things to explore, and here's some things your student can explore, so you can encourage them to jump on those opportunities.
Oh, absolutely. As a parent, it's sometimes even difficult to remember what classes your child is taking. and then they change all the time. So they're dropping classes, adding classes, reorganizing their lives around whatever. So yeah, I mean, knowing that based on the classes that they're taking, these are some interesting career paths or furthering education opportunities that might be interesting would be great to know as a parent, because then when you are having that conversation with your child, you can be well informed and having a conversation with them, not just about, oh, I thought you were taking this class, well, oh, you dropped it, but let's cut to the chase here. This is a good conversation to be having. Things will change all along the way, but the potential career outcomes or furthering education outcomes are also changing, and no, that would be wonderful to have a conversation like that at the same level of being informed at the same level that my son is on those questions. So yeah, no, definitely.
What do you think, Stephanie?
Yeah, again, I can hear in the back of my head my campus partners who say, yeah, but where am I crossing the line with FERPA? Where am I getting into trouble divulging too much personal information about my student's progress to someone who's not the student? But I do think that there's middle ground. I think that there is a great opportunity to modulate and find some content that you can share without getting folks into trouble. I also liked your idea, Amy, a lot about, hey, kind of the Amazon model, students who bought this also bought that. Students who did this had these kinds of opportunities. A little bit of algorithm gets folks at Ruffalo and Noel Levitt's pretty excited about things. So the idea, of being able to create that kind of dynamic content that says, oh, you want these programs, gosh, you might also look at this, or maybe you are this close to a minor in this other program that you hadn't considered. That's really neat. That's great service, and I think that's the kind of points of differentiation that the user, when they experience it on the site, will talk about and show other people.
Yeah. I love these ideas. I'm like now going back of like, okay, here's all the different things that I have to do for our website to fix it. This is great. And we have one last question, because I think we're getting close to our time here, from Amanda. What tips or strategies are recommended for creating or maintaining a strong web team or a small web team?
Oh, gosh. Well, you need to feed them regularly. A team is really important because higher ed is complicated and you need to have stakeholders and engagement from across campus. I think that you need to empower them with tools and resources to measure their work. You need to make sure that leadership understands and values and financially supports their work. And I think we need accountability, too. We need to make sure that people are looking at the right key performance indicators for websites and measuring, being brave about looking at the results, and being creative about incremental development. Lance, what would you say?
I'm sorry, but I had a hard time hearing the original question. I know it's about the team, but try to ask it one more time.
It was developing a web team to make sure that we're putting the right content out there.
Yeah,
Any tips on developing a website team?
Building a website team?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, all right. Yeah. Well, gosh, there's a lot of wonderful information out there now that I think is critical to, both from a technology standpoint and from a content standpoint, that needs to be addressed as you're building the right teams. So I think having people that can both understand technologically what's possible, and those who can understand what's really important, and building good relationships between those two types of people to make sure that the right outcomes are there is certainly where I would focus.
Excellent. So we talked a little bit before about the research that you all have done. Is there a good place where we can locate that research? I don't think we can hear you, Stephanie. Oh no, she dropped off.
Oh no.
So where could we find some of your research information, Lance, that you and Stephanie have worked on?
Oh, I think I heard that. So there's a lot of information that Ruffalo Noel Levitz puts out on their website that's wonderful. From OmniUpdate's perspective, we also work in conjunction with some of the research that's done by Ruffalo Noel Levitz, and we participate in the e-expectations data, so I can speak to that. E-expectations information, which has been done for the last 10 years, and trends and analysis and understanding of the changing landscape of all of this is available both on the OmniUpdate.com website, our website, as well as the Ruffalo Noel Levitz website. And Ruffalo Noel Levitz has much more information that we don't partner with them on, that goes in depth on parent and even advancement discussions and graduate school information and all kinds of things as well. So lots and lots of information on the Noel Levitz website. E-Expectations is really focused on advancing juniors and seniors in high school who have identified that they are going to college. So a wonderful survey of what their expectations are from a communications perspective, web, mobile, social, and how to best engage with them, as well as some parent information is all available in the e-expectations program.
Excellent. So
And it's all free and it's all available on our websites.
Wonderful. So we'll find that and make sure that we tweet it out as well. And I think we're getting close to our time. I'm so sad that we lost Stephanie here at the end. But I would like to thank you both for joining us today. Lance, you're absolutely wonderful, and Stephanie was fantastic too.
It's my pleasure. I'll speak for Stephanie. It's our pleasure. We appreciate this. Stephanie and I have worked together for about 8 years on e-expectations, and we've presented the information at conferences and professional organizations that you probably participate in. And it's wonderful to have been invited here to share some of our thoughts on that. So thank you so much, Amy.
I love this, and I feel like we got the inside scoop from some, like, real life parents, and I didn't even anticipate that. I love that. Great. So I would like to thank you always to our sponsors, FormStack and mStoner, and thank you for joining us today. Make sure to check out more shows from the Higher Ed Pros on higheredlive.com. We'll see you next time.
Bye-bye. Thank you.